Hey, this is going to be a little outside of my format of how I usually do things, because usually I'm in a car and I'm recording myself in a car, but actually I'm in my office and I'm going to go through the English requirements for truck drivers and the Arkansas, like the fines claim that's gone through this whole thing with this viral TikTok video. So it's going to look weird because I'm looking up at my giant monitor here to read. I'm going to be just up, like, forward with everything I'm saying. So if you agree with what I did or not, you can just click off if you want to. But I'm also going to give my opinion at the end of this, depending on how long it takes me to read this shit. Because I asked it, basically this was my prompt to ChatGPT. I have a pro subscription with that. And I did a deep search on this to see if there was any credible evidence to the claims that were made by this TikToker. I happened to see the video. I watched Mother Trucker today, and then I watched I saw it from Trucker Richie Rich. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. I drove with him at Prime. He was a colleague of mine. I happened to watch his video on it. Didn't agree with everything he had to say, but that's okay, because that's the beauty of being in America. So you can have a difference of opinion and still remain acquaintances, friends, what have you. So my prompt to this was, all I said in my ask was, recent viral video was released that truck drivers that could not speak or read or write English were fined, and their companies were fined. Is there proof of this? What is current law and what is currently happening now with this? And then it says, I'll look in the recent viral video regarding truck drivers in Arkansas being fined or not speaking, reading, or writing English. I'll also verify whether this is credible proof of this happening, review current laws regarding language requirements for truck drivers, and provide updates on any related enforcement actions. I'll share my findings with you shortly. Research completed in 13 minutes and 16 sources. According to my phone, it said there was 30 sources. So I will click on that and I will get the sources and I'll post it in the comment section for your review. I am just taking this at face value. I generated this prompt before I left from work, expected it to be done by the time I got home, and it was. And it took me a hell of a lot longer to get home than it took to generate this response. And since it used 16 sources, I imagine it did a deep dive on Arkansas law, the alleged video. You know what? Instead of me just jibber jabbering, let me just read what it has to say here. So, viral claim of Arkansas fines for non-English speaking truckers. A recent video circulating on social media claims that Arkansas authorities are stopping all trucks at weigh stations and testing drivers' English proficiency. Allegedly, if a driver cannot read or write in English, they are fined $5,000 on the spot, and their company faces a $10,000 fine. The video even describes some drivers being placed in handcuffs during these checks. However, as of now, there is no official confirmation from Arkansas State Police or mainstream news outlets that such fines have actually been issued, which I would take with a grain of salt, because a lot of that has been force-fed down our throats by one side or the other, and I don't know if anybody even takes them seriously anymore anyways. I'm going to continue now. The claim appears to stem from an anecdotal reports on social media posts rather than an announcement enforcement policy. In other words, the viral video's content is unverified by any authoritative source, and it seems to reference proposed penalties in a new state bill rather than confirmed incident. News coverage has discussed the legislation behind these claims, see below, but no credible news report has confirmed actual arrests or fines solely for failing an English test in Arkansas weigh stations. So essentially, it sounds like the state trooper actually tried to tell him that this is what's about to be starting to be imposed, but it's not imposed yet. Now, the reason why these guys would be put in handcuffs, I don't know. Let's just take this with a grain of salt, because overall, any social media outlet that you go to, basically rewards radicalization of any topic. So they are going to exacerbate a problem or blow it up more than it's supposed to be so that they can get interactions, clicks, views, shares, interactions with comments. And if you spark up some controversy, people are more likely to comment negative comments on your post or on your video than they are to do positive. Unless they're just really diehard fans and they just want to meet you one day or something, then they're not going to sit there and just be like, hey, good to see you, man. Hey, I'm glad you're doing okay. Hey, you're looking a little healthy. Like things like that. But if you find these new viewers that come on and they're just talking shit to you, then that's engagement, whether it's negative or positive. And if that person pisses off another viewer and they go at it in the comments, your video is going to get blown up because these guys are fucking having an argument. And if that's going on in like 3 different threads or 60 different threads in your comment section, It's going to say, hey, people are really engaged with this. Maybe we should put it in front of more people. And then the circle continues. So anyways, I digressed enough. Let us move on with the next section here. Regarding federal law, English proficiency for commercial truck drivers. So this is about 3 paragraphs, so I'm going to try to read pretty quickly. Federal regulations have long required that commercial truck drivers be able to communicate in English. Specifically, 49 CFR 391.11b2 states that a person is qualified to drive a commercial motor vehicle only if they can read and speak the English language sufficiently to converse with the general public, to understand highway traffic signs and signals, to respond to official inquiries, and to make entries on reports and records. This rule applies to all CDL holders in interstate commerce, regardless of nationality. The intent is to ensure drivers can read road signs and communicate with law enforcement or emergency responders for safety reasons. Enforcement of the English language rule has evolved over time. Until 2016, roadside inspectors could place a driver out of service for lack of English proficiency. In 2016, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, the CVSA, removed the English requirement from its out-of-service criteria, reasoning that inability to speak English is not an imminent hazard. And this was directly quoted from thetruckersreport.com. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, FMCSA, signaled that it would stop including English proficiency violations in roadside inspections, reports, or driver safety scores. That's also from thetruckersreport.com. This doesn't erase the legal requirement, but it means that drivers wouldn't automatically be barred from driving if found not fluent. Motor carriers, however, are still obligated to use qualified drivers. FMCSA guidelines remind carriers that drivers must speak and read English satisfactorily for basic communication and paperwork. The AI is not fucking this up. I am. Real person here, not an AI, allegedly. All right, that's from thetrucker.com. In practice, an inspector who encounters a driver with no English may issue a violation citation, but not necessarily detain the vehicle unless other issues exist. Recent federal policy updates have brought renewed attention to this rule. On March 1st, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order declaring English as the official language of the United States, which, while largely symbolic, it did not mandate changes in federal services, underscored the emphasis on English proficiency, thetrucker.com. Following that, some industry groups pushed for a stricter enforcement on the CDL requirement. For example, the Small Business and Transportation Coalition, the SBTC, in March 2025, urged FMCSA to revert the order policy of placing non-English speaking truckers out of service for safety's sake. That's thetrucker.com. These developments indicated a climate of increasing pressure to enforce English language rules, though no charge in federal law has occurred. The requirement in 49 CFR 31.11 remains in effect as it has for years, and enforcement policies are still being debated. So basically, that's just an overview of English speaking proficiency for commercial truck drivers. Now we're going to go into Arkansas law and proposed legislation on English proficiency. Currently, Arkansas adheres to federal CDL standards, meaning that truck drivers operating in Arkansas, especially interstate drivers, are expected to meet the FMCSA's English proficiency requirement. Until this year, Arkansas did not have a separate state-specific penalty just for language issues. Enforcement would typically come through federal regulations and standard inspections. That is now changing with new legislation under consideration. In the Arkansas General Assembly aimed at more aggressively enforcing these requirements at the state level. House Bill 1569, HB 1569, titled Secure Roads and Safe Trucking Act of 2025, was introduced in February 25th, 2025 by Arkansas lawmakers. The bill would impose strict state standards on commercial truck drivers and the carriers that hire them. Key provisions include. Now, this is going to sound very familiar because this is what was claimed in that viral TikTok video. Requiring all commercial drivers in Arkansas to hold a U.S.-issued CDL, thus barring use of foreign CDLs or drivers on temporary visitor visas from operating trucks in the state. Violation of the CDL rule could lead to vehicle impoundment and a $5,000 fine for the driver. Notably, this would end Arkansas's Yeah, whatever. Arkansas's block for Canadian or Mexican CDLs, which has raised questions about federal interstate commerce rules. Now I'm stumbling because I can't read a fucking word. Mandating that drivers demonstrate English, or this is the second one, mandating that drivers demonstrate English language proficiency sufficient to read road signs, understand traffic signals, and communicate in emergencies. Driving a commercial vehicle without English proficiency would be a violation punishable by a fine of up to $5,000 for the driver. Creating a new criminal offense for non-citizen drivers who cause injuries or deaths while driving without proper credentials. For instance, if a non-U.S. licensed driver causes a serious injury, it could be charged as a Class D felony, minimum 6 months in prison, and a fatal crash could be a Class B felony, minimum of 10 years. And now, finally, penalizing truck companies that knowingly employ or dispatch unqualified drivers if a carrier provides a truck to someone who does not meet the above requirements. Examples are no U.S. CDL or no English proficiency. The company can be fined $10,000 for each offense, which those two right there list 2 offenses, which would be about 20 grand, potentially, according to this. There is intent, and this is intended to hold employers accountable, not just the drivers. That's good. I think that everybody should share the wealth. The bill declares an emergency, meaning that it would take effect immediately upon passage and signing. As of mid-March 2025, HB 1569 is still making its way through the legislature. It has been discussed in the committee on March 18th, 2025, and has not been signed into law. So the specific fines and criminal penalties it contains are not enforceable at this time. The Arkansas Trucking Association has voiced opposition to HB 1569, raising concerns about practicality and legality. They worry that parts of the bill might not withstand legal scrutiny or could jeopardize federal highway funding if Arkansas diverges from federal regulations. In fact, a separate Arkansas House Bill, HB 1745, was introduced to counter HB 1569. It would continue recognizing valid foreign CDLs and work permits in the line with federal standards. This legislation debate is ongoing. So, next. To summarize, you guys basically heard that. I don't think I need to digress any further. We're already 12 minutes into this video, and I've done pretty good reading with the exception of one word so far. So, recent enforcement and reactions in Arkansas. Even though HB 1569 is not yet law, rumors of enforcement have already spread. The viral video and social media post of March 2025 suggests that Arkansas officials began conducting English literacy checks at a way station, implying the unofficial early crackdown. It's possible that inspectors were acting under the existing federal law, 49 CFR 31.11, to verify driver's qualifications. However, no official Arkansas state agency announcements have confirmed such targeted operation. If such checks occurred, they may have been part of a pilot program or isolated incident. The Arkansas Department of Public Safety and Highway Police have not publicly issued a statement about systematically fining drivers over language at this time. Thus, the fines at the way station story remains anecdotal, closely tied to the pending legislation provisions, and should be viewed with caution until concrete evidence or official statements emerge. Couldn't have said it better myself, I guess. Thank you, ChatGPT. Legal and industry groups are paying close attention to this issue. Civil liberties advocates argue that criminalizing drivers for limited English could raise discrimination concerns. The ACLU of Arkansas noted that HB 1569's English proficiency offense could criminalize people with disabilities and others who have difficulty communicating, and that the bill primarily targets immigrant drivers. On the other hand, some trucking advocates and politicians support stronger English rules, citing safety. They believe the drivers who can't read road signs pose a risk. The SBTC's recent actions at the national level and President Trump's official language order reflect a broader push to enforce English requirements more stringently in trucking. That was a quote from thetrucker.com. If Arkansas formally enacts HB 1569, it would be one of the first states to impose its own fines and penalties for English deficiency in trucking, going beyond standard federal enforcement. So, summary of key points here. The viral video claimed Arkansas was already fining truck drivers $5,000 and companies $10,000 if they couldn't read or write English. This claim has not been verified by any official source or news report, though it aligns with the proposed Arkansas law's penalties. Federal requirements. The U.S. federal law FMCSA regulations requires commercial drivers to be able to read and speak English for safety and communication. This rule has been in place for decades. While still in effect since 2016, drivers are generally not placed out of service solely for lack of English, but carriers are expected to comply and could be cited for violations. This was from both the truckandreport.com and the trucker.com. Arkansas legislation in 2025, Arkansas lawmakers introduced HB 1569, which could mandate English proficiency in U.S.-issued CDLs for all truckers in the state. It sets a fine for $5,000 for drivers and $10,000 for carriers. If drivers lack English skills or proper license, the bill includes felony charges for non-citizen drivers in crashes. HB 1569 is not yet law. Still in legislative process as of March 2025. Enforcement status. Until Arkansas passes a law enforcement of English proficiency relies on federal rules. There's no confirmed case of Arkansas issuing the new fines yet. Current reports are based on hearsay. If HB 1569 passes, Arkansas authorities would be empowered to actively test drivers' English and levy these penalties. Trucking companies operating in Arkansas should be aware of this potential change and ensure their drivers meet language requirements. Relevant updates. The discussion comes amid a nationwide focus on English in trucking. A recent executive order made English the official U.S. language with no immediate effect on licensing. And industry coalitions like SBTC are lobbying for a tougher enforcement of language rules. Meanwhile, groups like Arkansas Trucking Association and ACLU warn that the state's proposed policy could face legal challenges or conflict with the federal regulations. Sources. We've compiled the information from trucking industry news and Arkansas legislative documents to ensure accuracy. Key details about the Arkansas bill were reported by CDL Live and KATV News. The federal English requirement is codified in Title 49 of the Code of Regulations, and enforcement policy changes were noted in trucking forms and official guidance. Please refer to the citations for direct quotes and additional context. So that took me about 17 minutes to read, and now my throat's, I'm a little parched, so I'm going to take a little sip here. But a lot of people, that's me running a deep search on ChatGPT to find out what is going on with this whole thing. I'm kind of siding with this. You know, everybody's got their own opinion, and a lot of facts get skewed. So as of right now, everybody's discussions on these comment sections and talking shit to one another, going back and forth on whether it's right or not. I've pretty much absolved myself of reading that content just because I wanted to get the facts before I spit out my own personal opinion on this, which I'm going to get into now. So if you're not wanting to listen to that or anything that I want to tell my actual subscribers, you are free to click off the video now unless you're interested in what I have to say. First things first, just because I'm sure that my opinion is going to piss some people off, so I'm just going to say this now. I'm thinking of a rebranding my channel, since I don't drive trucks anymore. Obviously, I'm home. I have an IT job now, and I'm incredibly interested in AI and the direction that's going. And I also have some pretty wacky conspiracy theory thoughts about its future and our future and just everything going on in the world. I think about just talking about, spreading my opinion on shit like that and possibly getting enlightened by some of you guys if you don't share the same thoughts, which I welcome, incredibly welcome, with the exception of, just talking shit or calling names just because we don't have agreements on certain topics. So basically, I'm going to get on with my opinion here. Right. I'm first and foremost all for the safety aspect. Just, I drove trucks for 2 years. I drove for Stevens Transport. I drove for Prime Inc. And then I had a private company that I worked for where I leased an owned operator truck, basically, for flatbed company in Chicago. And made a lot of money back then. I don't know what the rates are, or, I'm not an economic type guy. I don't follow the trends or what something like this law would introduce to our economy, rates and things of that nature. I've heard different stories of what that could entail. Now I'm just speaking purely off of my own ideas of what's going on or how my mind works. I didn't do any ChatGPT research on this. I didn't ask it to do another deep search on how this could affect our economy, which could possibly provide a pretty substantial form of discussion with simply just what's available online, based on what majority of people are saying, which I'm one to advocate. Just because everybody says something doesn't make it true. There could be, what is that saying in Men in Black, where he's like, people are stupid, individuals are smart, right? I think that's what he says, something like that. Man, my buddy is just blowing me up with these texts. So my opinion is I agree with the safety aspect. I think if I were to go, Jesus Christ, if I were to go into another country and try to work there, I think that it would possibly be mandatory that I would need to be able to speak the language pretty fluently, right? At least have a sufficient ability to read road signs, know their traffic laws, things of that nature, and not, going in there blind and then learning on the fly. I think that's a fair assumption, right? Those guys in Fervor a long time ago, they were getting paid $5 to write shit on cardboard with permanent marker and dance with it above their head, and it had some pretty offensive stuff on there. So they got into a lot of trouble for that. I mean, if you're going to do business in America, you got to be able to speak the language or understand the consequences of what your actions are doing. You can't just get online and just expect to have immunity because you're in another country. Now, if you're here on American soil and you're driving a giant vehicle that's 80,000 pounds, potentially, and even not, at least, 17, 20,000 pounds, 17 if you're bobtail, 20 if you got a reefer on the back of you, and maybe 17 if you got a flatbed and it's aluminum. That's still a lot of weight, and that tire could completely crush the front end of a car. If you're not paying attention to road signs or the obvious shit, and that could pose some threats to people. And I don't know about you guys, but I've got family members that drive cars in the city that I'm in and the highways that I drive to get to work. Like this is all completely possible to me. You never think, oh, it could happen. It's not going to happen to me. It hasn't happened yet. You never know. You could be that person on the news and everybody else moves on with their life, but you're still stuck with that trauma. That's a pretty good indication. That's my belief anyways. Now, as far as that's basically my only argument is I think that if you're in our country, or if I'm in another country, I should be able to speak that language too. Now, what about the apps? And you're going to hold your phone up while you're driving so you can find out what that sign says while you're driving 60, 70 miles an hour with a load on the back of your truck? No. You've been behind these, what about if you're stuck behind one of these guys at ship and receiving? You're just trying to get your paperwork, and this guy's just trying to give his truck number to this person so he can get his paperwork and get the hell out of there. You're stuck behind him. It's like being stuck behind the asshole that can't choose what fucking lottery ticket he wants to get. All these goddamn contributors to society using all their retirement money and their social security to buy fucking lotto tickets and hope to hit it big right before the end. I've been stuck behind them too many damn times, so I've started to learn the times that I could go to these stores and not be stuck behind them. Regardless, I'm more in favor of this happening. Of course, when I told my wife about this, she had mentioned something similar to what I believe Trucker Richie Rich had stated, and that is the families. And I would say that it's not our responsibility to pick up after them, pretty much. Failure to plan on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. If you are getting into this business with whatever, you should be aware of the consequences. You should be preparing for it. It's not in law yet. If it does get passed, it's not like you haven't had ample time to get prepared for it. And if you aren't getting prepared for it, I'm sure the companies you're driving for are. It's only a matter of time before it gets caught up on. Now, regardless of whether law is right or wrong, it's law, right? I can say I've followed the law my whole life, and I haven't gotten any fucking benefits from it. I pay my taxes. I do all this shit. It sucks. right? And I'm losing all this fucking money. Where's it all going? I don't know. I don't see a receipt. Well, like, this is what your money was used for. Like I'm not safer. Groceries haven't, but they weren't cheaper. Fuel wasn't cheaper. Where the fuck's all my money going? What am I paying for? Right? Like, I thought this was forced on us. We should be seeing some kind of return on this. I don't see it. So now, as far as, when we're talking about money, what's the economic impact on this? And just trying to think logically about it. Some of you could argue that this is not logical, the way that I'm thinking about this. And that's fair, because I haven't really had a lot of time to think about it. But just off the top of my head, which I'm sure that a lot of people are passionate and they think about and act on and speak out on what's on top of their head. And they just spew it out, but I'm open for conversation when it comes to this topic, is I don't know what's going to happen if this happens. Now, for one, it's just the state of Arkansas. Now, if other people adopt it, I don't know. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Arkansas. That's just one less state. It could possibly make Arkansas a little harder to manage, trying to get their fruit and veg there and any kind of other deliveries that are required to be delivered from truck drivers. Will it even out? Yeah, I imagine it would, just like every fucking thing else in this world. Over time, things just, if a plane falls for long enough, it's going to correct itself. There doesn't need to be a pilot involved. Now, will it stay like that? I don't know. It might need some human intervention, but time heals everything. What is it? Time heals all wounds saying. I don't find it any difference in that with what we're talking about here. So basically, I'm on board with this. And I don't see any issues with it. I don't live in Arkansas. I'm actually surprised my state didn't do this, but we're so close to Mexico. I imagine that's probably the reason why. But if this happens to work out for Arkansas, I imagine that many other states are going to enact this, or federal government might get involved and turn up the heat on theirs. But I imagine that this would possibly take care of the flip-floppers, really. The guys that are parking in the fuel aisle, going in and showering, coming out with an Arby's bag. Their truck's been in the fuel aisle for half an hour, 45 minutes, and they're in there just fucking off. There may be a lot less of that. And the fact that if this does happen with just Arkansas, I imagine Arkansas would have a lot more freight for the taking for those that are legally allowed to drive in that state. And that's more loads going in and out of Arkansas for drivers that are legally able to do it. So, like I said, I feel like it's eventually going to even itself out. So, I think I've been talking long enough on this. I imagine this is going to be a pretty long upload. It's going to take a minute, even though I've got, a gig down and a gig up speed. We'll see. I don't know what this is recording at. I think it's just based on the way that it's recording me at maybe like 60 frames a second, 1080p. Don't want to do 4K on my phone. So anyways, remember, gents and ladies, love it, hate it, fucking rate it. Take care, and I'll see you all another time.